Now, most companies, I would say that would be the kiss of death. But this is Apple, and they've got a giant cash cow, and they've got a giant war chest, so they can afford to do that. But it's going to take them a lot of time. Well, again, green that can do math. And as a rule, I would say most EVs don't make it. If you believe Tesla, you can break even on your carbon debt in a matter of a couple of years, and maybe even economically a few after that. The problem is that Tesla data assumes that your electric vehicle was fabricated with 100% green energy and is fueled by 100% green energy, and that is just not the case. Most of the processing and most of the middle steps in manufacturing are powered by soft brown coal in China, and then even in California, only half of the grid is green. And then, of course, this might be a shock to some people, people are relying more on solar than wind in most places. But there has never been a day where the wind shines at night, which is when most people are going to be recharging their cars. So even if you've got a reasonably clean grid, you're still probably charging your car with fossil fuel energy. So that story probably isn't there yet. The technology may evolve, and if the technology evolves, I reserve the right to change my mind. But today, no. In addition, if we're serious about doing this with the technology we have today, then the build-out needs a lot more power plants for solar and wind, a lot more transmission, a huge number of battery systems to replace all those peaker plants, in addition to electrifying transport. That means we need 3 times as much copper, 10 times as much nickel, 18 times as much graphite, 12 times as much lithium, and on and on and on. And we need it all by 2030. There has never been a decade in human history where we've been using an industrial material and we've doubled its availability in a 10-year period. And now we have to do that and more for 11 different materials? No, cannot do it. So what's going to happen this decade is there's going to be a bit of a come to Jesus moment within the green community when they realize that the dreams cannot match the realities. And that means one of 2 things will have to happen. Number 1, the dream will have to change to something that's more realistic. Or the one country with the military capacity to do it goes out and secures the sources of these materials for themselves. Because while the world couldn't do the green transition with today's tech, the United States might be able to. But that means taking all of those things off the global market. Well, I'm not a financial guy, so take that for what it is, or take what I'm about to say for what it is. We're going through quite a churn right now as the baby boomers are removed from the system. We've had an environment of extraordinarily cheap capital that has lasted an extraordinarily long time, and there's just going to be a lot of shakeout. There's no way around that. We're all going to have to get used to a new operating environment. But if you fast forward just 2 or 3 years, when the vast majority of that money is gone, anyone who still has capital to deploy in that environment will discover that there's not a lot of competition in capital holders because the next generation, Gen X, is so much smaller. So you should expect the rate of returns 3 years from now to be significantly better on average than anything we've seen in the last 20 years, which means that financial planners will actually have to do their job and have to look for things that are companies that bring value and that aren't just being manipulated by cheap capital. For the investor, this is about to get a lot easier. For the investment professional, it's about to get a lot more competitive. Well, it's kind of funny because sometimes people have labeled me as the America's greatest purveyor of doom porn. So it's difficult to remain too cheery, but a couple of things. Number 1, we are going through a period of extreme change. And yes, that means a lot of dislocation and destruction. But this isn't the end of the human condition. This isn't the end of America or Australia, maybe the end of China. And so we know we will get through this. Our systems are stable. Our demographics are pretty good. Our finances are about as good as you can get. We will get through this. And in the case of the United States, if we're really losing access to materials processing and manufacturing, out of both China and Germany at more or less the same time, that means here in North America, we need to double the size of the industrial plant. And yes, that means inflation will be high for a good long time. but it's also going to be the greatest growth story in the history of my country and Mexico and Canada. And on the backside of this, we will have built a supply chain system that uses less workers, is more capital efficient, is more energy efficient, that employs locals to serve local markets, that's cleaner, that's more responsible, and it'll be largely resistant to international shocks. This is a good story. We just have to get from here to there. Let's put the financial question to the side for just a moment. We'll come back to it. Let's talk about everything else. Everything else looks pretty good. Yes, you have gone hook, line, and sinker supplying commodities to a price-insensitive Chinese market. And yes, as China breaks down, you're going to feel that. That's unavoidable. But you have far better relations with the nations of Southeast Asia, which collectively are going to pick up a lot of the pieces that the Chinese are going to drop as their industry collapses. They're not as price insensitive. It'll be slower growth, but it'll be more sustainable and more healthy moving forward. That is also a good story. I would also say there's an opportunity here for Australia to do something that it has shunned doing until now, and that's moving up the value-added scale yourself. A lot of those materials processing that the Americans are so paranoid about, guess who's got the raw materials? Guess who has some of the cheapest energy in the world? There's no reason that Australia can't play a role in upgrading the lithium and everything else that the modern world is going to need. And you also have the skill sets to do it. And you can even do it in green power in a way that we can't do it in the United States because your solar potential is so huge. So there are a number of things that suggest to me that we are looking at another couple of solid decades of growth for Australia. If you can get past that financial crisis, you've got to chew through something that's roughly 3 times as bad as what the Americans went through with subprime. And there is no way I can imagine that you're going to do that without a recession.
Okay, so we did this on a stock called MicroStrategy. We set up the trade here where this first circle is. What's happening here? Sorry, guys. Slides went crazy. Okay. Oops. Right. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened there. Okay. Anyway, so we set up the trade right here where this first circle is, and then closed it here in the second circle 20 days later. Right, now, what actually happened on this trade is we put $2,240 into the trade, and it turned into $198,700. Okay, so here's the actual trade here. That's a huge return in just 20 days. Okay, now we set this to be a year, but it did such a good move in a short term. I mean, that's a massive amount of percentage return in 20 days. So what I want to do is show you how to do a combination of monthly investing to start generating weekly and monthly income, and then in the background have 2 of these very powerful 100x strategies making you a lot of money over a 12-month period. A combination of the 2 is where you go to another level of income. So let's look at some amazing success stories. What I'm showing you here is monthly income, having 2 or 3 of these going at the same time. Now, sometimes they'll actually work themselves out in a day or a week, or in this case, 28 minutes. Set and forget process, $2,432 by simply buying a put option. Another of our members, Thomas, over $6,000 in a month. Following the simple set and forget strategy, a call option making over $100,000 in income. Now, here's an email from a lady, Jan. Okay, she joined the program recently. This is from a few weeks ago. She had never, ever traded before. Didn't really know anything about it. Jumped into the program and found a trade. Okay, so she actually made $263 from her first ever live trade. Never traded before. And as she says in the email, she got into the trade a little bit late, was a little bit nervous, got out a little bit early. Since then, Jan has gone on to make a lot of money. Okay, that's a fantastic thing, and that's why this strategy works so well. No complex stuff. Here's a trade we did recently on McDonald's. Now, this trade reached its profit target, which was 148%, or $593 per contract. Automated set and forget income. Now, you'd have to admit that owning gold right now is a very smart move. But here's the problem, right? Not everyone has the availability of cash to go and do so. Why not trade options on gold and then use that profit to go and buy the physical gold? So what we did here is you can see blue line crossing above the red line, blue line crossing above the red line, went and bought a call option. And so we entered the trade on the 16th of March for a cost of $2.21. Okay, exited the trade at $8.62 on April 18. That's a $641 profit per contract or a 290% return in a month. Do you think that you could do a couple of these, create enough cash from doing so, and then go and buy the physical gold with your cash from trading? Here's one on silver, another precious metal. 21st of March, we entered the trade for $1.07. Why did we get into the trade? Blue line crossing above the red line here, blue line crossing above the red line here, go and buy a call option. Okay, here's one of our members that actually did this. This is his particular trade on silver, his second live trade ever. Okay, so entered on the 21st, like I said, cost was $1.07, closed the trade on Tuesday, the 4th of April. So went from $1.07 to $3. That's $193 profit per contract or 180% return in 14 days. Now, the trade did go on a little bit further and he could have stayed in a little bit longer, but it's his second live trade. Did he learn from that? Has he made some massive changes and profit income since then? Absolutely he has. Because you can see here on the 12th of April, it's still saying hold your trade.